so that type of stuff is aggravating, and it's just, and it's a form of erasure that is, and I don't want to just say Black people, because there's so many other groups too that are not being like accessed at all or found at all in these films. But the just amount of laziness, mediocrity that can go into just making content and continuing to make content that only serves one type of story, that reinforces one experience. It's just, I'm over it.
Dreams, I keep having dreams.
Welcome to Tone Deaf Conversation Podcast. For this is episode 12. I had the privilege of meeting with a really cool person not too long ago. She has some extensive experience when it comes to working in the film and TV industry, particularly as it pertains to the marketing aspect. I reached out to her and I wanted to sit and talk with her because I felt like she had an interesting perspective, kind of being someone who's working behind the scenes, who could kind of almost, the word she used, could kind of tell us, how the sausage is made, but also being a Black woman in an industry dominated by non-Black, non-women. So I wanted to get her perspective. So we talked about a few things. We met virtually. So this is just my introduction of that encounter. So really quick, she has worked at some places like Sundance, I believe PBS, Netflix, just to name a few. And I hope you enjoy what it is that we got to talk about. So here she is, Miss Whitney McGowan.
Okay, cool.
Okay, do you want me to start with like an intro?
Sure, if you have one. I'll intro you, but if you have an intro as well,
Okay. Well, yeah, so my name is Whitney McGowan. I've been working in entertainment marketing in some capacity for 10 years. I did most of my career was in New York, and I worked at PBS and AMC networks there, and then I moved out here and worked at Netflix. So yeah, that's kind of like me in a gist, career-wise. As far as like how the sausage gets made, it's really interesting because for my entire career, I've always been at the like beginning of something. Meaning when I started in 2010, working in entertainment, I was hired to do like social media.
Yeah.
And so that was like the big push back then. And it was all linear. It was all, how are people watching it? How are we creating content for social? And then once I went to Netflix, that really shifted. Once Netflix came along, that really shifted the entire industry. And the networks that were creating and building these really incredible streaming services became so important. And so clearly that's where I wanted to be. I am working really close to the product now. That's the type of marketing I'm doing now. I used to do social media marketing, and then I did out of home marketing. So like trailers and billboards and all that stuff. And now I'm doing much more like product marketing. So direct to consumer. How do we talk to consumers? What type of imagery do we use to sell our titles being movies and TV shows, on product. And I actually just thought about this recently. I was like, this has always been my career. Like I'm always like, reinventing the wheel in some way. But it's really exciting. And yeah, I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
So was this like Whitney's dream as like a 7-year-old girl, or is this kind of a thing that you kind of stumbled into, or was this, deliberate? Some people were like, "Hey, I wanted to do this for as long as I can remember," or it's just like "Hey, I just took this job and then it ended up blossoming into something great." So, I mean, which one of those are you closer to?
Yeah, I took this job and it ended up blossoming because to keep it real, I don't know if you felt this way, but growing up, I did not have like a very clear path to like what I wanted to do. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there was like people wanted to be doctors, people wanted to be lawyers. At some point, I was like, I guess I'll be a lawyer, because there's really nothing else. Like there weren't a lot of people in my life that are like entertainment executives,
Yeah.
and
It's a
and
hard thing to
like there
just get
weren't.
into. Yeah.
Exactly. And like not only that, it was just wasn't. I was never in a position. Although my parents are both in real estate. My mom's a realtor. My dad's a real estate developer. That seemed really fun. They've done very well for themselves. But what's interesting is I don't think a lot of the people in my life, maybe I wasn't paying attention, weren't like these executives, these
Yeah.
corporate executives. And so to me, I actually was really lost when it came to like college time.
Mm-hmm.
And like even when I just wasn't, I never had like a clear indication of like where I was going to go. I knew I wanted to live in New York. And I knew that I wanted to do something like in the arts in some way. Um, and I just felt like my path would like guide me somewhere, which I think is a level of confidence that probably was silly for me at that time. But I was like, it'll work out. and so, I was like, I went to college, like what else do you need to do? It'll work out.
I think a lot
I feel like I
of
had the confidence of a young white man.
Yeah. I said I think a lot of people our age did that. It was kind of like, well, we might as well just go and see what see what happens. So,
Exactly. So no, I didn't have a clear path. So I went to school for journalism and art history. Art history was my minor, and journalism was my major. Like what? And then when I graduated in 2010, the entire like the whole publishing industry was in shambles.
Yeah.
Like, and also there just weren't a lot of jobs out there.
Yeah.
And my sister, who is kind of like my guide when it came to like the world of just doing anything, because she's 2 years older than me, she came out and and went directly into advertising.
mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, I can't do advertising because she's doing that, but I'll try PR. So I went out and I found PR jobs really quickly. And I interned at these companies. And one of the things I learned really fast was that it had so much less to do with what you know and more to do with like how hardworking you can be in the room. So then I felt like, okay, so what more, like the big thing for me was I just need to keep meeting people and figuring out like where I can land. And so I took all these internships. I was getting one of them internships was a fashion internship at Fleischman and Hillard. It took me out to New York, and I did agency life for like a year and a half, and then I finally landed. And I was fired from my first job, like randomly. I still think she's racist. This small PR agency that are so like unimportant. Like I don't even know if they're still like running. And I went up there and started as a digital associate to like work on some of our entertainment and CPG clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my first job, and I worked there for a year. And after that year, the woman told me, she was like, you're not getting enough fans. Like, you're not getting enough fans for the social pages.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was like, okay, so let's talk about that. Like, you know, like, give me some type of money, or so I can run ads, or, you know, like, I can't just like pull these people out of my, you know, my ass.
Yeah.
Like, where am I supposed to find them? And so her and I just started, our relationship just started declining. And yeah, she just fired me one day. It was like, the reason was because I wasn't getting enough social media fans.
Nice.
And you said you don't even know if this place is still among us anymore.
No, I do know I was the only Black person at the time that I was fired that worked there.
So
And yeah.
I do know. So for me, so I graduated with a degree in graphic design with an emphasis in marketing. So I've been in marketing pretty much my entire career as well, but more on the print side. I was for a good amount of time, and then now I'm more into the web since nobody really prints anything anymore. But I was have always been, I don't know what it is about marketing, but I have always been the only, if not one of the only Black people in almost any space. Like I've never worked at a position where there was like more than three of us.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure why exactly, but yeah, like same with me. I don't have anybody in my family that was. I mean, I've had creative people in my family, but none of them ever went to study for anything. Like I've had people who were musicians, but they were like self-taught, or I had people who were really good at drawing or painting or whatever, but they just kept it a hobby. Nobody ever thought, because I guess again, I mean, our parents were kind of that generation where they were like, you can't make money doing this type of thing, so it wasn't necessarily going to be a thing that they were going to tell me, hey, why don't you take art that you're into and try to make money doing it? Because I think they probably would have thought that there's no money in that, and now it's kind of like that's almost what runs the world now is visuals and uh, the way that we perceive things. We are always looking at a phone. We're always inundated with some type of advertisement, which has to be designed and done. So um, yeah. So I did the same thing, not really knowing whether or not it was even going to pan out to be anything. Fortunately, at this point, it has for me. So yeah, and I peeped your LinkedIn, and I saw your quite extensive resume. So it seems like it stuck for you too as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think after I got out of the agency world, but like, I do think that to agencies, like, Black people are more disposable. I think obviously Black people are um, like, it's tough in any industry. Like, it's always going to be some level of identity politics or code switching, or just like working that much harder. But in agencies in particular, what I learned in like my first year in the like working in the job market was that agencies see us as being extremely disposable. Like, that woman, like a few weeks before I was fired, we were bringing on a Black organization because the agency was forced to take on at least one nonprofit a year, and they were bringing on a Black organization, and they have never asked me to be in a pitch meeting before,
Yeah.
ever. And of course, they were like, oh, you should be in this pitch meeting. The only Black person. And then like, and then when the company lost a big client, and they were like, but they wanted to try and make it seem as if I was let go because of performance, they, they obviously are like, you didn't get enough Facebook fans. So sorry.
you know
You
what?
gotta go. It's just disposable.
Yeah, and I this is where I acknowledge that it's even tougher for women because it's like I know you mentioned code switching, and about like for me like about 5 years ago I kind of gave that up, and I'm like if it's too much then it's just gonna be too much. But I know that for a black man that perception is different than it is for a black woman, where if a black woman was to express herself in the way that she wants to, then she's gonna be called things. Well, maybe she won't be called it this to her face, but pretty much the bitch, the angry black woman, the for, and I know for me, I think, and again, this is just operating as a male in certain spaces where maybe people wouldn't have even felt like they could even say something to me. Whereas if I were a woman, then they probably wouldn't feel that same hesitancy and would probably be even more so um, disrespectful, basically. In that I can say something to her because she's just some woman. Maybe that guy I won't be as aggressive towards him, but I can get her out of here, or so it is tough though, in when you want to express yourself in a way that's not disrespectful, that is not out of order, that is completely warranted, and you always have to think in the back of your mind, how am I going to be perceived? Because if I don't have all of my T's crossed and my I's dotted, then they won't even listen to what I have to say, even if what I have to say is truthful and valid. It's gonna be stuck behind, oh, here comes the angry black guy again. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So so I did have a question along that line. Since you've been doing this for a while, have you noticed any change, any shift at all in not even just so much representation, but like I guess I will say representation, but I'll say genuine representation. Not like you said, hey, we're bringing on this black company because we have to. But more, do you see the shift to where black people, women, people of color in general, are being more genuinely sought after, and like not as a way to meet a quota, but more as a reason to gain different perspectives when it comes to whatever it is they're asking of you?
Unfortunately, no. I think that we still have a long way to go. I think that just even like even though my time in agencies was really rough, I will say like the little time I was there, but the time that I've been working at entertainment companies, it still is a lot of work that needs to be done. I think when I was at PBS, especially because it is such an older institution, there was a lot of work that needed to be done there that wasn't being done because that's how things had always been, you
Yeah.
know? And but then you see these newer companies and it doesn't feel super genuine yet. I
Yeah.
still think that there's a lot of like talk like, oh, well, we have to hire, we need a multicultural person on the team because we need to make sure that we have at least one. Or there's discussion around, oh, well, we're hiring chief officers of diversity and inclusion or chief officers of equity and diversity, which is the new thing. And like those are always the black women. Those are
Hmm.
it's usually like white man, white man, white man, white man, white man in the C-suite, and then the one black woman or the one woman of color is
Diversity.
usually the diversity person. And I think that's just so wrong. Like, and I don't see how people don't look at that and like and go, okay, so yeah, there's a problem with that. Like, I think that a lot of people are hired still to fill a quota,
Mhm.
and it sucks. I mean, if you think about it too long, you will be angry.
Yeah. So I know you. Yeah. I mean, I mean, there's a side of me where that's like, hey, if they're gonna hand it out, I'm gonna take it. especially when like, hey, this is a country where they've been handing it out to their own all this time, even when maybe they weren't the most qualified. So, why not take advantage? But it's like it's like an unfair burden to feel like, especially as like an aspiring director, like if I ever get a shot, like that I have to be A plus. Like I can't I don't have the ability to fail in this arena, because then the idea is, will I ever get the next shot? And that's why I've been so proud of what people like Ava DuVernay, Ryan Coogler, all of them have been doing, because they got their shots and they've been knocking them out the park. But it's unfortunate that they have to be held to such a wild, um, I mean, you got people making movies like Sharknado.
I think that a lot of the issues that we're seeing is that we can count on our hands who are the big black and brown, and all of these other like indigenous, like who are these people who are actually coming forward and making these projects and being like invited into the room. And I think that's the biggest concern is, it's like it's not what happens when they get there. Like the failure I'm okay with. It's like let them fail
Of course.
is the part that I struggle with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you wonder if they have that same room to swing for the fences, and maybe it doesn't make it, but that's art. Like
You talked
Like I watched The Photograph last night, and I was like, I when it first came out, my friends were like, I was like, I want to go see it, and they were like, oh, I don't know, like I don't want to not like it.
So
so the same reaction you have, I actually kind of have towards Lovecraft Country. But I'll say this: I have criticisms about it. But along with that, I absolutely loved the idea of black people and sci-fi. Like, to me, I hate that we don't get the opportunity to do those types of things. And I talked about it a couple times on this show, how excited I was about John Boyega being in Star Wars. I mean, because like I'm a Star Wars buff, and then all of it, I like a lot of people have wondered, like in this galaxy far, far away, how come there were only like two black people in this entire galaxy? There's nobody else black. Like it was just Lando. Like there's nobody else. And then all of a sudden, literally when they first dropped the trailer, there's this black guy that literally pops into the frame, and you're like, and he's in some stormtrooper costume, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is what it's gonna be. And then, kind of as that trilogy went on, his character became less and less, and then there was kind of a disappointment there. But I loved just the idea that a show like Lovecraft could kickstart a lot more like this, it's the same way I felt about Jordan Peele with his two horror films, because I love horror. So it's like here, like we can do more than just the typical, struggling black mom man who's a drug dealer slavery movie. I mean, I can't watch any more slavery movies. I just can't do it. Like so I like the idea that we get to tell, or it's becoming a little bit more of a norm to tell like regular black stories, because I only know regular black people. I mean, to me, I only know regular people. Like I know people who, they take care of their kids, they don't have records, they have, and I know people who do have records, and so I have, like most people, a well-rounded group of people. It's not just one type of person that I know. But how come only one type of person is represented on screen? And that's always kind of like the thing that I'm hoping that we're getting towards, normalizing a show like Insecure. I know about 20 people like each one of the characters in Insecure. Like, I know people like that. Like, here are some black people with college educations who are just trying to figure out their lives. They're in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're just trying to figure out who they're going to love, where they're going to work, how they're going to eat. And they're just like stories that not just black people deal with. Everybody deals with how they're going to make it in this world. And being able to see us pictured like that, to me, I'm appreciative of. So I hope you didn't take this as a HBO diss, because HBO.
No, I'm saying literally what I was about to say is I do not speak for HBO. I do not speak for HBO. You know what? This is not affiliated with them, but my opinion is I will fight to the death on Twitter or wherever about Lovecraft Country. I think that it was the fact that it just got made is the thing that like Misha shared her pitch on Twitter. And it's like all in these little index cards. Okay. And it like brought tears to my eyes because the fact that it even got made is the most important thing. It just feels like such a big step. And so that's really exciting to me. I also, I think that we deserve to also have Black and brown characters that we don't like. Like I watched Industry like last night, or I binged the whole thing this weekend, and basically I hate the lead in the series is a young Black woman. I despise her,
and that's fine.
Exactly, like that's the thing. Like why? So so much to discuss when it comes to this.
Characters aren't meant to be loved. Sometimes
this person's meant to be misunderstood or meant to rub you the wrong way. That's the way they are. We all know people.
Be complicated.
I know people that I try to
get away from this person because every time I see them, they do nothing but bring me headaches. So it's fine to see someone like that on TV because there are actually people like this. So, I mean, but I will say this, because between Lovecraft, Insecure, matter of fact, I gotta watch the this I think it's a one-off episode, the Euphoria, the Ruse, I think it's called like Ruse Story or something like that.
Oh my God, yeah, I watched that too.
I love that show. So I mean,
that episode is a work of art.
I guess it matters where your perspective is, because I know you are in the behind the scenes area, but I guess from my standpoint, it feels at least more possible than I guess it's ever felt that there's an opportunity and a potential space for you to tell the types of stories that you want to tell.
See, I think we went through a period of the same thing that we were finding in behind the scenes in the workplace was like, we got to fill these quotas. We got to put a Black person on like at least one of our teams. We need to have at least 3 Black people who work here, and she just can't be sitting be the receptionist. Yeah. And you know what I mean? So like, I think that that's what Hollywood was going through as well. Mm-hmm. Meaning, so that meant that we were getting a lot of token Black friends. We were getting a lot of magical Negro tropes, like the Queen's Gambit.
So we just
what a waste of time.
Okay, so I don't know if I'm going to put this episode first or the last episode I recorded, but we literally talked about that in how, and I thought it was a beautiful story, by the way, but here is the
Black. It was fresh.
And why does she have to be the sidekick again? The one that kind of comes in and,
So
she literally gave away her life's savings after not seeing this girl for a decade and was like, I want you to go to Russia and do what you need to do. So I'm going to give you all this money. What? And then like we never got any resolution around like what her did she give her some money back?
She just smiled at. She just laughed at the end after she won. That's all we got. Is that she felt satisfied that her sacrifice was not in vain.
But that was so ridiculous. Like, what person is doing that? Like, it was so dumb. I was infuriated when that scene came along. I was like, okay, sorry, that was my dog. When that scene comes along, I was like, this whole series is now like whack to me.
Yeah, because that happened in like episode like 7 or 8 or something like that, right?
It was one of the last
Yes.
episodes.
I was like, how you gonna dupe me with the magical Negro at the end? Because
Yeah.
she was getting a little magical Negro-y at the beginning when she went and got her those pills that she needed.
Let me get you. Let me get you the advice that you need. Let me get you the medication you need, and then let me get you the funding that you need for you to be great.
Yeah, with zero regard for her character, zero character exploration, no growth. It was lazy. It was
At
lazy.
least show us that like
Yo, she's balling out right now. So that little change didn't really mean nothing. Like I made it, but we don't even really know.
it's
Her storyline was so strange. She's like,
It's sad that it's gotten to the point that underdeveloped black characters.
don't
oh wait, but sorry, hold on. Sorry, I want to finish that point. And like, so the point was that's how it used to be. Like, and it still is. And we're kind of crawling our way out of that. But now, what we have seen is, and this really helped with Black Panther. Black Panther shattered like a lot of boundaries in a way that the entertainment industry will probably never be the same because of the fact that it made so much money and it did so well. They started light bulbs started going off and they were like, oh, actually we can start to profit off of Black people. And they're like, and so now that it's become like a business initiative, they have realized that like not only do Black people go to see movies that they care about with Black characters, they want to know who made it. Mm-hmm. And they want to know like the person behind it. They want to know that they directed it. And so what they're seeing is what this industry is seeing is a very slow trickle from like the tokenized character to now finding one or two, maybe three really great Black filmmakers, directors, like screenwriters, so that they can like bring them in and give them overall deals and keep them, like i.e. Kenya Barris, Regina King with their Netflix deals. Mm-hmm. So like we're going to continuously start seeing that where they're going to grab Black creators and give them a bunch of money, great, so that they can start churning out content for them. And I think if that's the future we start going in, that's really great. I really hope that same representation starts to happen for other groups too. Yeah. And that is when we're going to reach like Mecca.
Well,
if the industry is going to in any way model America, then it's kind of fitting that it's the Black person who is the one that kind of trailblazes civil rights, and then everybody basically takes that perfect model and then, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? So, that's why I always allude to how important we've been to this country's development in that not only have we blazed paths for ourselves, but we've left fantastic blueprints for other people to be heard in a way that we don't know if there would have, if there was no civil rights movement, how does that affect other movements that would follow right after, So I mean, I agree with you. I hope that I just want to hear, and this is just me, a person who appreciates watching movies. I just want to hear different stories. I mean, to me, it's just as simple as that. But you don't really get to hear different stories until you allow different people to tell them. And like I said, there are people from different races that all experience some of the same things, but maybe this person their interpretation of that is one way, or the way that this person is able to describe it is different there. And then we just get, I think, is like you said, like the art in its purest form, when you get to just have people telling stories, and people telling pure stories, not like, hey, I'm gonna tell a story of the black experience, even though I'm not black, only because I want to cash in on whatever I might get for it. But let me tell an authentic story, you know.
John Singleton films are so amazing because he was telling his actual story. And like, even like Ryan Coogler's approach to what do you call it, Creed, is so like fascinating because he's telling something that's close to him, that he understands. And
I talk about that movie all the time
because the way he did it was the way that I felt. I love the Rocky franchise. But as a black kid watching Rocky, I'm thinking, yo, there's no way Rocky's beating Creed. Like, I want to know more about Creed, because like they made him to be like the loud, boisterous guy. But it's like, yo, he sounds like my uncle. It's like, I want more of that. Like, what about his side? Give me that side. Sounds more interesting, you know? So I love the fact that they got to tell that story in a way that's like, it still feels like a Rocky movie. So he still respects the canon and what it is that Stallone built. But then now, hey, let's tell a different side of that same story, but let's just tell a slightly different side, which, again, two fighters who are dealing with some very similar things, but it's just, hey, one's an Italian guy and then one's a black kid, you know? So, you know, to me, so I like that you bring that up, because that's a perfect example of that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it manifests in different ways in different corners of the globe. But I also think it's interesting what you were saying too, like how if entertainment is going to reflect America,
Yeah.
I think how is entertainment going to reflect on the global scale?
Yeah.
Because what another thing that Netflix has done is they have shrunk the world to such a small thing, like because of the fact that all of the streamers now are like slowly building to get bigger and bigger and bigger, so that they can start serving different countries and regions. And that's when those types of things are going to become very important.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why Black Panther was such a success, was because it went global. It wasn't just domestic plus 3 regions. It was global. And so there was it was a pretty big, like the impact of that was felt. And I think we're going to continue to see that. And we're going to continue to see these franchises build and grow. And it's just wondering, like, how are we going to continue to make sure that we're encouraging representation through those, so that we are debunking and reinforcing the importance of different cultures on a global scale?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Netflix. I mean, one of my favorite series on Netflix is Narcos, and one of the things that it didn't hit me at first, because I watch anime, so like subtitles don't really bother me, but I was watching this show and I was thinking, wow, most of this show they're really speaking Spanish most of the time, and it made me think of how many shows or movies we've seen that take place in like Mongolia, but they're speaking like with a British accent, and it's like how somewhat refreshing it is that here is a story that takes place in Colombia, and they're speaking Spanish. And it's up to me as the American, if I want to enjoy this, then I gotta watch the subtitles.
Like, why can't this story? Of course, yeah, of course. You know, but it's just, I noticed that.
And I think I noticed the same thing with Tarantino. He did it with, I think it was in Inglourious Bastards. And like most of that movie, they're either speaking French or they're speaking German. And I'm like, and it just made me think, like, wow, like this really doesn't happen. Like usually they just slap on some British accent, and the British accent is like, that's the accent for every other. It could be based in China, it could be based in India, it could be based anywhere else. They just throw a British accent over there, and that's just like code for, hey, this is not English. So let's just do that. But then why not? I mean, if a thing, you know. So to me, that just goes to me to like the honesty of storytelling. So like if this takes place there, then it should represent the people who live there. And if it's supposed to, I'm all for authenticity in film and TV. And again, I can only speak to from a Black American experience, knowing like if I see a certain show, like yeah, this isn't how we talk. Like who wrote this? Because this isn't us, compared to something that does feel more real, and But again, that this all goes to who's in the writing rooms and who's behind the camera.
It's important to enforce it's important to enforce that through the culture too. Yeah. Like Disney did a really good job of hiring a lot of Asian, especially Chinese actors and people behind the camera for Mulan. And Mulan still struggled a lot. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Disney has a lot of, aside from like its release, because obviously that release was a little difficult because we're in a pandemic. But the film struggled, in my opinion, because of the fact that there were so many elements of it that had to be like Disney-fied, with like the red tape that they have. And one of the big things is that it was in English. Mm-hmm. Although it takes place fully like in these like these beautiful townships like somewhere in China. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it's a very a really interesting thing, and hopefully we'll start to see more of that. Like record it in its native language, and then if you make the decision. Multilanguage playback has completely changed the entertainment landscape, because that is what is creating the shrinkage. Like, what's that show with the bank robbers on Netflix? I can never remember the name of it. Oh my God, it's gonna kill me. I didn't watch it.
Series?
Yes, with all the bank robbers who wear the mask and that they have red jumpsuits. Oh my God.
I can see the artwork for it, but I can't.
Me too. All right. Well, maybe put it in the note.
Yeah. I'll superimpose it.
Yes, exactly. But basically, that series is a global hit, and it was one of the first times that I was there during that time, and I know that it was one of the first times that Netflix was like looking around and saying like, oh, actually, we can have global hits, and they are made for this. It was made for our Latin America region, but it wasn't made for the U.S. and it blew up here.
Money Heist.
So yes, Money Heist, but it's the Spanish name for it is, what is the Spanish name? Anyway, a very, very interesting thing to see that like we as United States, Canada, like Northern America, we receive we have the capacity to receive subtitling and the capacity to receive this content, and if we just are encouraging filmmakers to make it, I think that entertainment is going to do just so much better.
Wasn't Dark also filmed in German? And I think there's like a dubbed version that you can watch.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. You can watch the dubbed version is what is served like probably to you in America, and you would have to go in and change it if you want to listen to it in another form. But yeah, okay. So yeah, a lot of progress, but we're not there yet.
So that will lead me to my last question. What are your hopes? What's your prognosis of where we could potentially get?
Yeah. I think from the like internal television side, I think we still have a ways to go when it comes to like how we're hiring executives. And that's not just entertainment. That's pretty much every like industry. It's honestly like shameful how much we still are some of the only people in the room. Mm-hmm. um, and then what that leads to is just subpar work. That leads to, like, if you don't have a diverse workforce, what you're producing, what you're putting out into the world is not going to be good. Yeah. And so I think that's the step one, and like what I really hope companies start doing more and better at is not just hiring people for multicultural roles, not just hiring people for and when they get to the C-suite, they have to be chief diversity officers. Like, it's just silly. But so that aside, on the external side for entertainment, I really want to see a whole entire flip in how, like, what we look at for quotas. I would really love it if we could start to do like one film maybe a year that is like solely for the white audience and that has their stories. There are decades of that content that exists. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't we focus on Latinx representation, indigenous representation? It's honestly, I've been on a high horse about this indigenous representation. What is going on? There is literally nothing that you can watch right now, other than one Netflix show, I forget the name of it, last year, that has a lead that is indigenous right now. There's one that I can think of that isn't like tragic and that isn't, well, actually it is tragic. So there's none. So
no trying.
I have to also find that show and send it to you. But yeah, so I would really like a complete flip in how we are creating content. I think the quota needs to change. Yeah. I think that the number one thing for me is I just want to see more authentic representation, and the only way to achieve that is to hire the right people. Also, I would really like, have you ever heard of the Bechdel test?
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm gonna share it with you afterwards. But the Bechdel test is something that was a formula that was come up, that this woman named, I forget her first name, but she's in the entertainment industry. Basically it was, I'm trying to find her name. Anyway, the Bechdel test is basically a test to determine if a film passes the Bechdel test. That means that there are enough speaking women in a role where they're not just talking about men. And it's not been around for a long time, but it's been around for about, I want to say, like a decade. And basically, I became aware of this because it became such a big deal when I was working at Sundance, because Sundance Film Festival, all that stuff. But I would like to see a test like that, and maybe we could call it the Coogler test after Ryan Coogler. Yeah. That is how we approach Black and brown characters in series. I really think that we're allowing way too much to continue to slip through the cracks when it comes to the content that we create. Like that Queen's Gambit one, that would there was not one content person who had a note about that.
Not if
you know what I mean?
Of us in the rooms.
Exactly, but that's the thing, right? Netflix doesn't give notes.
Yeah.
Like that. They don't try to change the arc of the project. They want to encourage that filmmaker. All right. So then you hired white men, by the way, to tell a woman's story. Mm-hmm. And yeah. So that was also very complicated. A podcast for another time. But
yeah, I went to look. I was like, wait, are there any women writers on this? And it's like, no, it's even written by men too. So I'm thinking maybe. Yeah.
And that's why it felt so weird. I was like, what's wrong with her? And like, why is it that clearly you had a Queen's Gambit episode, so I'm not gonna like go in, but like I have so many thoughts about it. Like, why was she like so tortured by her mother but not tortured by her father? And like, why was it that like all this blame that she placed on everything? It just felt like, anyway, we don't have to get into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so to me that's the way I see it. I think it's a top down thing. So until the people who are the decision makers start to become more diverse, then I think it will become more normal. Um, Rather than, hey, let's just give them their their few minutes so that we can appease them and then get back to doing whatever it is that we want to do. But um, yeah, it's I think it will be a fascinating thing to really actually talk about what Black Panther has actually done. I saw this study. I think it was done by USC, and from 2007 to 2017, they basically took the most successful 1,000, the top 1,000 successful films made in that decade, and of the 1,000, so 1,000, three zeros, there were 22 movies in which there was a lead or co-lead that was not white. So out of 1,000, there was only 22.
See, like that, yeah.
And that was also the Oscars are so white year.
And when basically Chris Rock basically ripped into everybody that Oscar year. And then following the next year, the number almost doubled, and then the year after that, it almost tripled, and then I believe that was the Black Panther year, and ever since then, it's kind of, so it's almost, to me, it's like, so you guys started to give more representation because you realized how bad it looked, and when you did that, we got some of the most successful films we've ever gotten. So what does that tell you? Maybe we should have been got a shot, because when you like begrudgingly gave us a shot because you didn't want to look bad, then boom, Black Panther happens and it makes a bill. So to me, it's like I'm glad that we have been really taking advantage of whether those opportunities are genuine or not. I'm glad that we've been proving that we can make movies that are successful, that black can indeed travel. Yeah, because I know that was a big thing. I don't want to have this black movie because it won't sell overseas, and well, now you can't use that excuse anymore. So I don't know if I'm positive or I don't know. I think I'm hoping that there is a shift. I'm also wondering, do we see more Tyler Perry's, where it's just, hey, well, I'll just make my own thing over here, and I'll produce my own movies, and kind of make my own little thing on the side. I would enjoy either one of those, but
yeah, and Tyler Perry, Spike Lee, he basically had to fund all his own movies. I also think there is I have long said this about Tyler Perry, like, he deserves to be recognized in the same category as like an Ava DuVernay.
Yeah.
And I think, it's sad that he isn't, just because he makes his content for another audience, which again, like, look at Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler makes the corniest, like, worst movies, and he's not, I mean, I think people are catching on, but he's not like dragged in the same way that Tyler Perry is.
other folks have been able to make their movies, their little niche movies, for their fan base, and no one's ever. I don't think he's very funny to me. I enjoy him in.
Not for me. He's not. I'm not his audience.
Yeah, I enjoyed him in Uncut Gems, but as far as like some of his comedic stuff, it's just it's not my type of comedy. But fine, make your stuff. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have to like your movie for you to make your movie. But, like you said, keep the same energy when it comes to a guy like Tyler Perry, where I can also say I'm not the biggest fan of some of the stories he tells, but I'm sure I'm gonna root like hell for him to be able to make those movies, and I hope he never stops. I hope he keeps turning them out. Put 3 of them out a year. Why not? Put all the shows out as you can. Do all of that. I want to see that, and I hope to see other people do the same thing. Because we've been seeing it from other non-black directors for a long time now. So, uh, you know, it's our turn. It's our turn. You know what I mean? So,
Exactly. Okay, so I know that you asked me one last question, but I have a question for you. What do you think about the Academy Award, like updates for Best Picture, and like all that stuff? Do you think that that was a step in the right direction? There was so much discussion about it, and yeah.
so I'll be honest. I have to do some more reading because I've only kind of done some surface level stuff on it. But I know they've been trying to do a lot when it comes to some new awards. Um, I I hope so. It seems to be a step in the right direction. I guess we'll find out. To me, it still seems like I see the Oscars as not too dissimilar from a lot of the studios. I just kind of see like, hey, we'll give them their one every once in a while and say, hey, here's their award so that they could win something. Um, I mean, I love the fact that that Parasite won. But I almost wonder, was that okay, it's time for us to do a foreign director and let him get his win. I guess we'll find out in the future if that becomes more normalized or if this was just like a one-off. So I guess I gotta hold off on my reservation until we see whether or not this is just a trend that's going to come and go, or if it's the way that it's going to be from now on.
Yeah. I was talking about it with some friends, and they were like, they believe it's going to lead to more tokenization, and because you have to really like it's pushing screenwriters
yeah.
and creators to have to hire, and they're going to be like, okay, well, they'll find loopholes. They'll be like, okay, well, you just come over here, stand here, don't say anything. You know what I mean? Like, I think the new rules are expansive. There's a pretty long list.
Okay, so
But
I pulled it up, so I'll read a couple.
okay, yeah, read them.
One is like at least one lead or significant supporting actor from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group, or at least 30% of the cast in secondary and minor roles from 2 underrepresented identity groups, or a main storyline or subject that centers on an underrepresented identity group. So I mean, like, I get it. I get like I'm glad that they're doing it, but what I don't want is like the fine here stories. You know, I instead of just saying,
And those are just for Best Picture. What you just read, I think, in order to be nominated for Best Picture,
Yeah.
there are actually like there's so many more associated with this.
because I don't want a great film that doesn't have that to not get its just due.
Well,
See, that's
I
really
hope
different. Yeah, I'm like, no,
like
you
example,
should be.
I just
Yeah.
watched
I just watched whatchamacallit yesterday. Mank.
Who
Mank. It's on Netflix.
make?
Mank. Mank.
Oh,
it's with
I don't know this.
um
Usually people don't stump me on a new show, but you know what?
it's a movie.
And it's Fincher. So it's a Netflix original movie. They got Fincher on board, and it's Gary Oldman is the star.
Oh, interesting.
It's basically around.
It's basically centered around the writer. I forget his first name, but his last name is Mankiewicz, and he was the co-writer of damn, what's that movie Orson Welles did, Citizen Kane. So it's basically following this writer and him basically showing or revealing his interpretation of Hollywood. So it's a cool little movie about the history of Hollywood and that 30s 40s era. But like anything else in the 30s and 40s, it don't got nobody black in it. So it was a great movie. I thought it was great, but like there was nobody that was black. It was just white people, which I guess is true to the era, you know.
Do you ever listen to Paul Mooney's? Sorry, this just reminded me of one of his funniest jokes, where Paul Mooney was like, "White people love to go deep sea diving." This is how I feel about white people. They love period pieces. Yep. They're like, there was no black people, and like white people love to go deep sea diving. They get down there with the great white shark. They're like, "You white, I'm white, thank you," and they just swimming around.
There was one. Well, okay, so the movie is shot in black and white. And I think there was like one black guy who was on the screen for like 15 seconds. And that was it. And that was the one thing that stood out for me. Okay, fine. You're talking about MGM and all these people. So it makes sense that you wouldn't have really any black people. I guess one thing that was authentic is that the only women in there were women who were like typing stuff up. Like it wasn't no women in boardrooms. So I guess they're authentic in that standpoint, but it's like, you mean to tell me there ain't no black people in LA? Like ain't nobody walking down the street that's black? Like there's nothing else going on? Like the entire city was
but
like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Yeah.
No black people. Like it's just so that type of stuff is aggravating. And it's just it's a form of erasure that is and I don't want to just say black people because there's so many other groups too that are not being like accessed at all or found at all in these films. But the just amount of laziness, mediocrity that can go into just making content and continuing to make content that only serves one type of story, that reinforces one experience. It's just, I'm over it. And like, I just think that we can do so much more. And we know the importance of entertainment. Like, we don't need to get lost on that. Like, this will literally, like, it can change lives. People can watch something and like completely change careers.
People are informed by TV. A lot of people are informed by TV and film. Like, that's how they find out about things.
About history, like, inform so many elements of who we are as a culture, as a people. Our global identity is informed by our entertainment. And so the fact that we have just allowed these people to continue making content and just continue enforcing the same story, same experience over and over and over again, just because they're lazy and they're mediocre. And it's just like I love Martin Scorsese. I wrote a whole dissertation on mob films when I was in college. I love them. But it's lazy. Can you make one thing about someone else? Like, that's it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you are such a great director.
See, honestly, for me, I am not as critical about that. And except for if you're gonna let him make this little box of movies that he wants to make, then why is someone like Spike Lee not given that same freedom and leeway to do the same thing? So it's like, I would have no problem if you let this guy, he is an Italian, because I've heard him talk about it too. He's an Italian kid, Catholic. So all of that informs the types of, and it inspires the types of stories that he tells. Fine. So then how about a kid like Spike Lee, who grew up not too far away from Scorsese, who's telling some similar stories just from a different perspective, but he's got to fight and scratch and, just to get money to do the stuff that he wants to do. So it's like, again, I would have no problem with it if if we wouldn't also celebrate it when we do it. So Spike Lee gets a bad rap if he uses the word N word and puts black people, but why? He's doing the same thing that Scorsese is doing. He's just telling stories that they both do some of the same stuff. They're talking about the types of neighborhoods that they grew up in and some of the experiences that happened there. That's really all it is.
Yes, and I think you're right. I think that's the right way to look at it, opposed to like forcing a Martin Scorsese to like give us like his version of She's Gotta Have It.
I agree with you
that Hollywood is lazy. I do agree with you there, and that there could be a little bit more elbow grease put into, that type of representation. Because if you're talking about New York, black people lived in New York too.
Yeah,
He was there because that's actually
like
a big thing.
Irishman.
Well, that's the thing, because it's funny because Spike Lee does that, because Spike Lee mentions how in New York there was a lot of confrontations between Italians and blacks, but then when you look at Scorsese's movies, there's almost no black people. So you mean to tell me that this only happened in
Spike Lee's universe, but in
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, there's not even a black extra. You know what I mean? Like you're
in my head, and I can't think of it.
Oh, in Goodfellas, they killed Samuel Jackson's character. That was it.
Wait, how come I can't remember that?
I don't even remember if I don't even think he had a big character, but whoever Joe Pesci's character, I think they went into his apartment and killed him, and then took his coffee maker. But he didn't even have a big role.
Okay, so I don't remember that, but all that being said, I just want us to push. I want them to feel pressure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I want them to feel like, okay, maybe I should bring on, like, collaborate with a really great black screenwriter because I have this story to tell and I think that we could fit in, or I think that this person could be a black character, like Little Fires Everywhere. That character, Kerry Washington's character, was not written as black.
Mm-hmm.
They made that decision. And then they brought her on board as a producer to help inform that character. So, like,
I think the same thing happened with what's the detective show that Mahershala is in?
True Detective.
I believe
yeah,
that
it was
also supposed to be right. Oh,
yep.
Yeah, but that's one version of this. Like, but we can also write characters. You know what I mean? So I think there's just some lazy. It's just the laziness. Just if you were just doing the same thing throughout your entire career, wouldn't someone pull you aside and say, "Hey, you're gonna need to like freshen things up because while you're doing like okay, like you're doing the same things. You're making the same drawings every day. If I was sending out the same like marketing campaigns every day, would that be okay? No, we're all held to such a high standard. Mm-hmm. And then you look at these predominantly white men in Hollywood, and they can do whatever they want, the same exact thing forever, and no one calls them out on it. And I think that's wrong. And so I do think that someone like a Martin Scorsese could easily, or like, I mean, let's leave Steven Spielberg alone because he made The Color Purple. But like, but you know what I mean? And he did it well. And he had a great group of people that helped inform on that project. Although it's been criticized, I personally love it. I think that, I think that they could just be doing better. They could be collaborating more. They could be figuring it out. And I am very encouraged. So no, I don't think that we should be rewarding people for basically being lazy and mediocre. And so I'm proud of the Academy. And I know that there were some actors pushing back on Twitter saying like, oh, well, you didn't get the job not because you're black. You didn't get the job because you're probably not a good actor. Like that was a whole tweet that went live from Christy Alley. So,
which is a lazy response.
Lazy.
So lazy is the key word of the day, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. And you know what? This has always been my thought, like around even like executives even like how we were raised, being lazy, being mediocre has never been an option for me. Like, I have to always come with the best ideas. I always have to stay on my toes, and like, once we hang up, I gotta do some work because I have to make sure that I'm fully prepared for tomorrow. And it's just like you don't always see that for our white counterparts. We don't hold white people in the same regard. And I don't know if it was cast or if it was a recent podcast I was listening to where this came up, and the mediocrity is like a disease amongst white men in particular. And I think that we just have to do better. We have to hold them accountable, and we need to call their bullshit when we see it. And I call bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not looking at it from this standpoint, even if because I even had an episode where we talked about why there are so many sequels and redos. I think all of this just comes down to Hollywood just trying to cash in on what they think is the easiest way to make a quick buck, instead of what is the best way to foster creativity and beautiful new stories. And, to me, which I think is far more sustainable than, hey, let's just try to do what we think is the sure thing, and it results in us having a good amount of the movies that hit the theater be underwhelming, and maybe there are one or two movies. Dang, that's crazy that you said that, because now that I'm thinking about like all of my favorite movies from last year, 2019, damn, none of them had no black people.
Because I just thought Joker don't have no black people. Joker had Zazie.
Yeah,
he'd have her. Okay. I'll give him that. Okay.
And yeah, I mean, that character was something.
Yeah. All right. So I'll give you the pass on that one. So yeah,
You the pass. Sounds like you need to give yourself the pass.
Yeah. So I'm allowed to enjoy that. I'm allowed to enjoy that guilt-free still.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can't even think of my favorite movies from 2019. I will say some of my recent favorite movies. Yeah, I don't know. I would really have to think about that. I consume, since the pandemic and just by nature of my role.
Yeah.
Okay, I was making sure you weren't frozen. I consume a lot of television and movies, so I don't. I would not be able to answer that, but I do actively seek content that is diverse, because I understand how streaming works, and we should all be really aware of that. Do not skip over when you are merchandised a black or brown series or film. Watch it. Because if that watch counts. Just like going to the movie theaters. If you're cleaning your house and you have something going on, or you have something going on and you just want something on in the background, watch something black, and let it be a new black series, not an acquired one. So yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting.
Well, I appreciate you carving out some time on your.
Well, I hope you get something good out of this. You're gonna have to obviously do some edits. I'm sorry. I tried to keep it together.
Yeah, but no problem. But yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate your insight.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll chat with you later. Thanks for letting us do it over Zoom.
Of course.
All right. And I'm happy to come back anytime. I'm always down to talk entertainment. Oh my gosh. Clearly very passionate about it.
Cool. So we'll definitely do this again.
Okay. All right. Talk soon. Bye.
Haven't said a word in years. Haven't seen your face. Find it kind of funny how we ended up this way. I try to get rid of it, but I don't have control of it. Ain't it kind of funny how we ended up this way?